All of you know him as the UFC welterweight champion, but most of you love him for breaking Colby Covington's jaw at UFC 245. Before the reigning 170-pound title holder became the top dog in the welterweight division, Usman's journey into the world of mixed martial arts started like most fighters. Usman began his athletic prowess in Arlington, Texas at Bowie High School, where he tried out for the football team. Clearly, his dreams of being in the NFL did not come to fruition, and during his sophomore year, Usman was testing the waters with wrestling. Not surprisingly, the Nigerian native excelled at the sport by the time his school days were over, with Usman having an impressive record of 53-3 before transferring over to William Penn University. Usman continued to perform strongly at the sport throughout his college years, earning the NCAA Division II national title in 2010, and he became a member of the University World Team for Freestyle Wrestling. While the future UFC star was a gifted athlete at the time, Usman realized that he wasn't going to be paid much if he continued down the path of wrestling, and opted to go into the world of MMA. After rigorous training that saw Usman focus on his strengths as a wrestler, but increased his cardio and defenses, Usman officially made his MMA debut against David Glover on November 30th, 2012 at RFA 5 in Nebraska. And guess what? Usman knocked the daylights out of Glover in the second round. And despite the fumble in his second matchup against Jose Caceres, Usman continued to knock the bejesus out of welterweights and lit the MMA world on fire. Fast forward to 2015, and Usman was confirmed as one of the contestants on The Ultimate Fighter American Top Team vs. Blackzilians. The rookie, who entered the season with a record of 5-1, advanced into the finals thanks to his wins over Michael Graves and Steve Carl. His submission win over Haider Hassan cemented his place in the UFC roster that also came with a sweet six-figure contract. Usman didn't simply coast off his contract, as the new UFC star continued to rise through the ranks using his superior wrestling skills to get the better of his opponents. Along the way, Leon Edwards, Damian Maia, and Rafael Dos Anjos fell victim to the Nigerian nightmare, and at this point in Usman's UFC career, he had a strong undefeated record of 9 wins. His victory over Maia earned him a UFC welterweight title opportunity against the then 170-pound champion, Tyron Woodley. Like Usman, Woodley used his amateur wrestling background to get the better of his opponents. Coming in, the Missouri native was on a 5-fight winning streak in terms of title defenses, with Woodley's winning streak spanning nearly 4 years. Yes, I said 4 freaking years. Of course, Usman had to up the ante on his training, as the challenger was facing a champion of the same pedigree. In preparation for Woodley, one of the key things Usman focused on was strength and conditioning. It was his first 5-round fight, so Usman didn't want to gas himself out by the time round 3 arrived. Exercises such as deadlifts, drag sleds, and medicine balls toss helped strengthen his stamina. Of course, the core of Usman's training regimen was boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, and MMA. Basic moves such as sparring aided Usman to get more comfortable on his feet instead of relying on his ground game, especially since Woodley's a master at wrestling. His regime also focused on submission escapes and other counter maneuvers for Woodley's arsenal. In terms of his diet, the source of Usman's fuel was bacon, eggs, toast, oatmeal, and juice for breakfast, chicken breast or fish, rice, veggies, and salad for lunch, and a variation of the same foods for dinner. His snacks were either protein smoothies, fruits, or almonds. With all of that hard work and training, did Kamaru Usman's intense regime aid him to victory on Saturday, March 2nd, 2019? Of course it did. But you knew that, old wise one. Usman didn't just win the fight at UFC 235, but he pretty much murdered Woodley throughout the 5-round contest. Kamaru Usman was the new UFC welterweight champion. However, that wasn't a cause for celebration, as the challenge was just beginning. Usman's first challenger was the controversial figure Colby Covington. Say what you will about the loudmouth from Clovis, California, but the welterweight star was a well-rounded fighter who had all the tools necessary to beat Usman in UFC 245. Toss in the constant trash talk from the brash UFC star, which has been a signature move that's worked for Conor McGregor, and Usman was walking into his toughest fight to date. Covington's biggest strength was also wrestling. The UFC welterweight champ made sure to train for Covington's takedowns and focused more on his stand-up. Even though Usman was notorious for his knockout game on the MMA circuit before joining the UFC, the Nigerian nightmare hadn't scored a knockout in 5 years. Well, that would certainly change on December 14th, 2019, as Covington and Usman had a back-and-forth war that many didn't expect. Being experts on the ground, both welterweights decided to stand up and rely on their striking. The brutal battle came to an end when the referee called off the fight in the 5th round via TKO. What's impressive about that is that Covington had broken a jaw going into the final round thanks to the champ himself. Go ahead, celebrate Usman breaking Covington's jaw. Usman's next title defense came against the baddest man on the planet, Jorge Masvidal. While Usman was tearing through the division, Masvidal's star was rising following his shocking win over Darren Till in 2019. And when Masvidal nailed that deadly knee that KO'd Ben Askren in 5 seconds, he was the hottest MMA star on the roster. His win over fan favorite Nate Diaz only skyrocketed his popularity even further. However, Masvidal didn't get into his position because of his attitude. Street Judas backed up his fight game, and going in, the Florida native had 6 knockouts recorded in the UFC. Though Usman showcased his striking during the bout against Covington, his training still needed to adjust some of his stand-up game, as Masvidal had proven his worth when it comes to throwing fists. Usman added several new exercises, namely the L-sit, pull-up, assault bike sprint, and landmine punch. These moves aim to build Usman's strength, endurance, and power. And what happened when UFC 251 rolled around? Usman dominated the fight and continued to cement his status as the top dog of the welterweight division. In this fight, Usman's wrestling was a huge asset that Masvidal couldn't overcome. Usman would successfully defend his title against Gilbert Burns and Masvidal again, proving that Street Judas just isn't on par with the Nigerian Nightmare. What's next for Kamaru Usman? It appears that he'll fight Colby Covington once again sometime later this year. As you can see, Usman's training regime has gotten him to the top of the mountain in dominant fashion. Don't be surprised if Usman continues to be king of the welterweights for a long time.